Hey, welcome back to the Awe Shift podcast. I'm your host, as always, Anthony Trucks, and today's guest is Laban Ditchburn. Now, Laban has a really interesting story of a person that kind of went through some craziness. He's actually 7 years sober now. He's an author of a book called Bet on You, which the story around how that name came to be is a really interesting one that we actually dive into. But he happens to be the world's best courage coach. You might go, well, what does that mean? Well, dive into today's episode and find out what it means. Because the truth is, when you understand what it means to be courageous, how to be courageous, and where to be courageous, you can actually apply this concept to your life now in real time to unlock doors that you didn't even know existed and the ones you do know exist, and allow you to access a level of life that, man, maybe wasn't possible to your mind beforehand. Honestly, a lot of us are all just that one single thought, single message, single something away. And we unpack what that is in the conversation today. He actually talks about how someone he met today when we're recording the episode, he helped change their life. It's kind of a unique story that I think you'll really, really enjoy. So hop into the episode and I'll see you over there. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. You obviously know who this is because I gave you a little introduction. So I'm just going to say welcome. Welcome. Laban, how you doing, man?
Mate, if I was any better, I'd be in Boston bronzed and erected in the town square here somewhere. So
is that what they call it?
Very, very, very good.
There you go. Nice. I like that. Sounds good. Some people always told me, like, so if I was any better, I'd be you. And I go, oh, that's a good answer. That you're going there. But it's okay. It's a good one. You're in Vegas now, right? What you just said?
Yeah. Just we've been on a heck of a road trip. We're homeless. We went to an event in Mumbai about 3 and a bit months ago in India, and we were living in Mexico in Playa del Carmen. And our adorable landlady Norma, she said, "Hey, you guys, if you're going to be away for at least 2 months, I'll take over the rent of the place, and so you don't have to cover the rent." And I was like, "Hey, that makes sense." So we did that, and we just decided to extend our trip for 2 months. And she broke up with her partner while we were away, and she sent this really embarrassed message. "Hey guys, I'm sorry, I broke up with my partner.
Can't come back.
I need my house back." And so we just said, it's my wife and I, Anna, and we're just like, well, let's just stay in India. And then we flew straight to the States, and we'll be here for about 3 months in total. But we're kind of nomads at the moment, which is a lot of fun.
That's cool. It's got to be a benefit to that, to an extent, for sure. I mean, you get to experience life and the nuances of it all, and you're not tied anywhere. That's got to be cool. I think part of me would enjoy that for a window of time, but not like forever, which I'm sure maybe it's the same for you guys.
Well, you'd be amazed how many people say, "Oh my God, like I would give everything, sell my left leg to do what you guys are doing." And I think that's been a really, really good part of the journey for us, just to stay grounded and realize that we are living the dreams of many people. And this isn't an accident, Anthony. This was by design and by manifestation. So it's another powerful anecdote that you can use when you're talking to people and trying to inspire people to live the life of their dreams. And that's really what Anna and I are doing right now. And life's not without its challenges, of course, but for the most part, dude, man, it's been so much fun. So
I like it, man. And it helps you get somebody. Yeah, as long as you have somebody like by your side, like if you have someone to like hang out with you like under a bridge when you're broke, that's a powerful thing, man. Because obviously you're not going to be broke, but like that kind of locked in. Then as the world changes, they flow with it. It makes it easier. I do want to dive in, and I always ask this one conversational question. It's one you can take wherever you want. It allows me to kind of like dig into the head and the heart of you in the moment, in real time. That opens the conversation and be the discussion we'll have. So here's a question. I'm wandering around Las Vegas. I sit down in a coffee shop. I sit down next to you, good-looking guy. I don't know you. You don't know me. But for some reason, you turn and feel compelled to start talking to me. In your opinion, why should I listen to you?
Well, what a fascinating question. And you're taking me back because I talk to a lot of people, Anthony, and I can assure you that exact instance has happened previously in my life. And my response would be, and I'm going to steal this from Mel Robbins because I saw you interview her on your show a while back, is that it'll be different from what she said, actually. It's if you energetically feel aligned to talk to me. If not, don't.
I like that. I think she had said, she's like, maybe you shouldn't. I think it was something like that, or like, don't listen to me. Like, she did say that. I was like,
Yeah.
first time I've heard somebody say that.
I,
But I think that is true. Like, if you feel like it's something you should listen to, because there's always going to be that thing that we have as like just a I don't know, energy that exudes, from who we are, and sometimes how we're feeling in that moment. So yeah, if you listen, you listen. If you don't, you don't. That's cool. What would somebody garner from listening to you? What, in your opinion, like, let's say somebody just chooses to listen to you. What's the thing they get to walk away with that conversation, like from that conversation with?
well, I'm going to share an example that happened this morning. So Anna
Okay, I'll take it.
very gently suggested we go for a walk, and we're staying right near Las Vegas University here. And I looked on the map and I could see there was some fields and some grass and stuff. And we went there and we went for a walk around the track, and there was a young African American guy with this real cool dreads, and he was in great shape. And I'm walking barefoot on the grass because I love to ground, and for those who don't know about grounding, it basically connects you with the earth, and we take a grounding mat that plugs into the wall wherever we travel to, and
Really?
there's a lot of science behind it. My resting heart rate drops by about 7 or 8 beats a minute when I sleep on it. And so I loved the real thing. And he noticed that I was barefoot, and we started chatting, and I asked him what he did and who he was. And he played football at Las Vegas University there.
Oh yeah.
And
UNLV.
he was 22. His name was Dago. And we just started chatting, and I said, what do you want to do with your football? And he said, I want to go all the way. I want to go all the way. And the interesting thing was, Anthony, that he'd just come from the club, and he was training. And I know, as a former professional footballer, you know all about this, right? Like he'd made a commitment to get to the ground to run out all the toxins and all the Hennessy. Like, that's what he said he was drinking last night. And I just said to him, can I ask you a couple of questions? And he said, yeah, sure. I said, is going out to the club all night no judgment, by the way, no judgment, is going out to the club all night, is that the behavior of someone who would become the best in the world at football? And he sat there for a second. And of course, it's not, right? And so we just started talking, and we probably spoke for about an hour. What he said, and I even got a video testimonial from him as well. I'm not making this up. This happened. And he said that the conversation that we had completely transformed his life. And a lot of it centered around reclaiming your power through adversity. And I know that's a topic that comes up a lot on your podcast and with some of your guests. And the reason it keeps coming up is because it's a universal law, in my opinion, right? And I shared with him some of my background. And for those who don't know, I'd be celebrating 7 years of sobriety this year, longer for drugs, longer for gambling, which is hilarious that I end up in Las Vegas again. And I did it without any 12-step. I've killed that addiction. I can walk through a casino. I can go through restaurants and not worry about, alcohol doesn't affect me. But that was the one particular thing that he said. He gave me about a 90-second testimonial. And this kind of thing happens to me all the time. And it's one of the most rewarding, fulfilling things that I get to do in my work. So that's the honest answer.
Beautiful. Human to human, man. I like that. It's those little moments that honestly people don't notice or see as like the pivotal, like that's the catalyst. Like that's the one moment they can go back to and go, I met this dude who was walking barefoot in Vegas who definitely wasn't American, and he changed my life. Like, it's kind of like that kind of unique little thing. But I think we sometimes rob ourselves of those interactions because we're not in a situation where we feel open to talk to people or even to share stuff. Or what you said that I think was cool is you said no judgment. I think like I have the ability to have these conversations too. I don't get testimonials. As soon as you said that, I'm like, maybe I should.
You absolutely should. We'll talk about that in a minute.
People, but right. I have a lot of these conversations, and what they are is it's a moment for someone to hear them. That is genuinely no judgment. There's no investment of the relationship between me and them beyond this conversation. They're not being judged. They can say their piece, and sometimes it just lets them work it out, and then they find that little nugget of a seed that they can grow into something cool. So hopefully it does get that. Because as soon as you said that, I'm like, yeah, if he's 22, he's at that window where like, the pros are coming up. Either he's right at the edge of it or he's a couple of years away. And that's what he's doing, man. Like, it's not going to help. I think I drank 4 times in my entire college career, all 4 years being there. Now I played in the NFL. Now definitely there's guys that do a lot more than drink and they still make it. That's just not the statistical norm. It happens. But I think there is something to that. So where did you all the things you shared with this man, right? There are obviously things you talk about, and you're a coach that coaches on courage and a whole lot of cool things. We'll get to your book here in a little bit. But where did you find like this was like your experience to share? Because at some point people have gone through this. I'm sure other people have become sober and done some things. But for another human to go, you know what, I'm in a position where I feel compelled to share my thoughts, ideas, my heart. Where did that kind of journey go to get you here?
Well, in 2015, when I was 35, Anthony, it was when I sort of bounced along the floor of my own rock bottom and finally ground to a halt, and had a moment where I realized that the direction that my life was heading at the time was not what I imagined when I was a young man or even a little boy. And
Mhm.
and I was at home one night, Tuesday night. I had about 3.5 bottles of appropriately priced Pinot Noir coursing its way through my veins and smashing into my liver. And I was gambling on a laptop, not even watching the horse racing on TV, spending money that wasn't mine. And in that moment, I realized that this wasn't the life I imagined. And I was, like at a level
Yeah.
of degeneracy where I was just like F5ing the page just to refresh it to see whether I'd won or lost. And
Mm.
in the bottom left-hand corner of the laptop that I was gambling on, and I've been on this page hundreds of times before, was this
Yeah.
number for the Gamblers Helpline. And I didn't even think, and I just picked up the number. This is back in Australia, by the way. Picked up the number,
Okay.
and this woman picked up the phone, Anthony, and I'll never know her last name, I don't think, but I'm going to call it Magdalene because her first name was Mary, and she was my
Okay.
guardian angel, whether she knew it or not. And for the first time in my life, I was listened to without judgment. And she allowed me to pour forth and just dump on her all the drama and shit that was happening in my life.
Well,
And
yeah.
just before she broke from the overload, I stopped. And then she shared with me something that chilled me to the bone. And she shared with me that problem gamblers experience suicide at rates far higher than some of the addictive behaviors, like alcohol and
Wow.
drugs. And I
Yeah.
didn't know that, man. And I was like,
Yeah.
that scared the pants off me. And she put me in touch with a gambling psychologist who, for a
Yeah.
year and a half, which was free, paid for by the taxes from gambling losses. So for the first time in my gambling life, I was
Oh,
actually
wow.
up. Got access to
There
this
you go.
amazing counselor, right? And in
Yeah.
that first session, she asked me about the relationship I had with my mother, which at the time was incredibly dysfunctional. And I just broke down and wept. And that started a healing journey where I started to realize that mum and dad did the best they could with the tools they had available. For many years, I'd blame them and look what they did to me and blah, 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 victim, victim, victim. And that was the
Mhm.
moment where I started to reclaim my power. And then when I reclaimed my power, I was able to use it as a fuel source. And as the healing journey went, I was able I quit gambling at the end of 2015. I quit alcohol August 26, 2016. And then I started to get my mind right. And then I put an incurable autoimmune disease that I had into full remission using dietary shift. The dietary shift was a predominantly animal-based diet. So my body
Yeah.
started changing. I lost 60 pounds of body fat. I put on 30 pounds of muscle. I started
Wow.
running inexplicably in 2018. And I started
Yeah.
running 60-mile ultramarathons out of the blue from within about an
Amazing.
18-week period from not running any further than 3 miles. And
Yeah.
when you go through an experience like that, your connection to source inevitably improves. And I know I'm
Mhm.
not a religious guy in any capacity, but I've become very, very spiritual. And the question at the very beginning, the way that I think about connection is from an energetic level. So it would be whether they feel like it's a pull or it's a push. And fast forward to September 2018, the week before I ran my first 60 miler, I walking down the streets in Melbourne, Australia, and I spy this woman from about 70 yards away, and she's stunning. And
Mhm.
all I can describe what happened next was I was struck by a bolt of lightning, picked up by a force far greater than I, and levitated towards this woman, plonked down in front of her, and with the confidence of 1,000 Spartan warriors, I said, "Excuse me, but you are stunning. And I wondered if you ever drink with me one day." And that's my now wife, Anna. And
There
so
you go.
I found my purpose, I found my soulmate, and I found
Yeah.
a reason to take ownership of all of the drama and the dysfunction and the trauma that I'd experienced, and
Yeah.
use those as powerful anecdotes to be able to connect with people And you as a professional speaker know this more than anyone, like storytelling is something that's been around since the dawn of mankind. And people resonate when you tell your story from a place of strength. And that's what happened with Dago this morning. And all I used was stories and examples of what Anna and I had gone through, and it just resonated.
I love it, man. I love that you dove in to fix your own life. You know, that's the one thing that I think few people do. It's unfortunate. It's like they'll hear these stories, and there'll be that one or two people that actually hear it and go do it, but there'll be thousands that just don't. And I wish I could just grab them and be like, just shake them, like, wake up. You know, like it'd be nice. You just like wake up, but they don't. And maybe it's not their rock bottom. Maybe it's not their time to do it. But I always think also like the passing moments, because I think about what if you were not who you were when you did cross Anna's path. Like, you know, like the trajectory of your life would have been differently had you never like had that interaction. And then the next ones and the next ones. And it's like so many people are missing that moment, that change, that transformation, that person, that purpose. Like it's all missed. And the only really thing you did differently was you woke up and started working towards something, right? It's simple, but not easy. That's really what it is. It's simple, but not easy. Now for you speak on courage. Where does that tie into the whole process?
Well, I'm affectionately known now as the world's best courage coach. And I sometimes have to say the word courage a few times in America because people are like, courage? World's best courage coach? It's like, dun, 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 dun. But that came from an experience that I had in 2021, Anthony. And I got introduced to a community of peak performance coaches, some that had coached NBA players and PGA golfers and Major League Baseballers. And there was one particular guy by the name of Steve Hardison, who's known as the ultimate coach. He's a 67-year-old guy out of Mesa, Arizona, devout Mormon guy. And he's been coaching people like Byron Katie, Iyanla Van Zant, who was Oprah Winfrey's coach. He's currently coaching Tony Robbins' ex-wife, Becky Robbins. And to work with him is $200,000 for 50 hours, just to give you an idea of sort of level he's at. And he had chosen for many years to remain a complete and utter enigma. And I learned about him through, there's a video that exists online. It was 1 2-hour, 10-minute video. It was the only thing that existed. He turned down being on the Oprah Winfrey Show a number of times. And I don't know what his reasons for staying off grid were, but he had him. And I watched this video, Anthony, and you know, I'd love you to put it in the show notes as well for people to experience. Because if you get 1% of what I got from it, it's transformative. But I watched this video with this guy, and he was talking about the power of being. And it was about a guy, Deuce Latui, who you might know who was a former player in the NFL, an offensive linebacker, first Tongan in the NFL. And it's not about football, but it's about this guy. And I watched this video, Anthony. I was so moved by what happened in it that I was like, I need to speak to Steve Hardison to see if he's the real deal. And I'm also known for being very outrageous and reaching out with big names and getting them on my podcast, cold calling them and that type of thing. So I'm very resourceful. I got this guy's phone number, I called him up, and he picks up the phone, and I'm back in Australia, and he goes, "This is Steve." And I said, "Steve Hardison?" He goes, "Yes, it is." I go, "Steve Hardison, it's Laban Ditchburn from Melbourne, Australia." He goes, "Laban, so great to hear from you. I've been waiting for this call all my life." And I'm like, who is this guy? This is incredible. What a way to pick up the phone, right? And I said, "Steve, I just watched this video about you talking about the power of being, right? This I am statement." And I was so moved by it, but I just wanted to ask you one very specific question. Now, one thing to know about Steve, he refused to do podcasts. He refused to do interviews, obviously refused to go on Oprah. He never had a book. Like he didn't want anything. He didn't want any public. He was a very wealthy guy. He had about a 35, 40-year relationship that he was in with his wife. He didn't need anything that I had except for this. So I said, "Steve, what do you need help with?" And he goes, "Laban, I just want to acknowledge you for asking me that question." He said, "You know what? I'm 8% body fat. I'm 65 years old. You know, I got everything a man could ever want, but I just want to thank you for asking me that question." I said, "Oh, no worries, Steve." I said, reason I ask is I'm a speaker, I'm a coach, and I've got this podcast series called Become Your Own Superhero, and I'm well on my way to being known as the world's most positively influential speaker. But someone that I was talking to recently said that there's too much ego in that statement. Now, Steve, complete character shift yells down this phone at me at the top of his lungs. He goes, Laban, you tell that person to fuck off. Do you know who I am? And I go, who are you, Steve? I'm all evangelical at this point. He goes, I'm the best coach in the world. When he said it, Anthony, it came from a place of absolute zero ego. And I know that might be hard for people to take on, but I swear to God, it was the truth. And what he showed me was this power of declaration. So on that day in 2021, the declaration of the world's best courage coach was created, not for ego, but to identify and allow me to have a mantra that every day when I wake up, I ask myself the same question: how would the world's best courage coach conduct himself? Incidentally, it's non-quantifiable and it's intangible. So until they start having a world's best courage coach convention out of Mandalay Bay here in Las Vegas, no one can take it away from me. And if my book gets deleted, if my relationship fell over, if my podcast got shut down, I can still hold on to that declaration. How would the world's best courage coach conduct himself? And that's the power of making these kind of declarations to the universe.
I like it, man. And that's big, because to have the courage to state something is a big piece. I think there's a lot of people that don't even state it out loud to themselves because they know they have to actually adhere to those things. And there's, like, my son, I almost all the time that I'm like speaking and talking, I find that it always ties back to my kids and lessons I want to teach them in weird ways. My brain just tuned there. And I explained to my son, like, he gets a little nervous and he gets all, anxious. Well, it's not supposed to not be scary. Like, it's supposed to be scary, but you're supposed to match that. You have to match that with courage. It's the only thing you have at your fingertips as a tool sometimes to go, like, I'm just going to be really courageous. I don't know for sure. It might not pan out, but I know if I don't give it my all and show up with courage, it's 100% going to go the opposite direction. It's just going to go in a funky place. But if I give it my all, there's the chance I need. There's the shot I need to do great. When people hear that, though, like, where do you want them to place that? Like, when they hear courage coach and someone else, like, what should they be thinking about applying this concept to in their lives?
So you couldn't have asked a better question if you tried, right? Because there's two parts to this declaration. As entrepreneurs, right, how many revenue streams do you have, Anthony? Like, how many job titles do you have, right?
Oh, dude,
like it's a lot. So when you meet people for the first time that aren't in this space, it's very confusing for people to try and understand what we do. So I created this for twofold. One was the declaration, but also to give people some clarity when they meet me, because when people say to me, and don't get me wrong, when I first started saying this, there was a lot of imposter syndrome that kicked in, and it was scary. But I'd made the declaration, so I was like, fuck it, I have to lean into this. But when people ask me, they met me for the first time at a restaurant, hey, Laban, nice to meet you. What do you do? And I go, I'm the world's best courage coach. Now, first things first, no one's ever heard that combination of words ever come out of anyone's mouth. So it's very polarizing. And 99 times out of 100, the next question is, wow, what does that look like? And I go, well, I teach people how to take bold, massive, and courageous action so that they can facilitate their own miraculous outcomes. And I do that through my speaking, my coaching, my book, my podcast, and my mastermind. And what it does is it gives people clarity in a very confusing space so that they don't feel like an idiot asking further questions. The beautiful byproduct of them having clarity, in my own personal experience, is that they're way more likely to feel comfortable asking more questions. Then when the questions come, the answers come, and you're operating from a what value can I add to this person's life, you get to have transformative conversations time and time and time and time again. And so with what happened with Dago this morning has probably happened about 250, 300 times in the 3 and a bit years that I've been doing this. Maybe more, maybe I'm underselling myself.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. Because it actually does clarify. Like, as you're saying that, I'm wondering what I would say. I wouldn't state them the world's best at something, but like basically question, like, do I need to? Because I like the idea of the challenge, this kind of concept you're talking to. Well, not that I have to, you never know though.
Let's have a bit of fun with this for you and for the audience, because
let's have some fun.
I've been able to help over 100 people come up with their world's best statement, right? And there's some very careful parameters that you must implement in order for it to be effective. I said it before, it has to be a non-quantifiable and an intangible statement. So if you were to say to me, I'm the world's best NFL player, well, unless you were given that accolade, we know that's out of alignment, out of integrity. I'm the world's best 100-meter sprinter. I'm not Usain Bolt, whoever the current fastest guy is. World's best courage coach is such an unusual statement. It's like but other people can make the declaration. But the way that the universe gives these responsibilities to us, it's very unlikely that other people will end up resonating with the same title. So the questions that I ask people to help them get to this, the root of this question is, you have to answer this. What am I the best in the world at, or world class at, that other people find very challenging?
Yeah.
If you don't know the answer, just don't worry. Second question is,
I know the answer. Do you want the answer?
Oh, you tell me the answer. Let's figure this out right now.
Oh yeah. I'm world class at doing dark work, man.
Okay,
like I'm world class at doing things that nobody sees, that are not fun, sexy, appreciated. Even my own family doesn't get what I do half the time. But that's something I do fall in love with. That's my whole brand is around that dark work concept. But I'm the best in the world at doing stuff that nobody else is seeing, and being happy that I'm doing it with nobody else seeing.
So I don't need the next two questions because you just answered it for me. World's best dark work coach, right?
There you go.
And the second statement, and I teach people how to take bold, massive, and courageous action. You can take as much of or the same as that statement and just tweak it around what aligns with you, right? And then the follow-up is, and I do that through being a professional speaker, my podcast series, my books, the other job titles that you have, and a father and a husband. And so I'm gonna meet you for the first time. Hey, Anthony, nice to meet you, brother. What do you do?
Oh man, I'm the world's best dark work coach.
Wow, what does that look like?
Oh well, at the end of the day, I believe it's the work you do in the dark that allows you to shine in the light. So you have what I call a dominator's identity.
Amen, brother. And you do, and I do that through my book, my speaking, my podcast, and that type of thing. You see where I'm going with this? How do you feel? How do you feel when you say that out loud, by the way, honestly?
Oh, I like it. I mean, it's funny is that people always ask what I do. I've always said before, I help people develop a dominator's identity. I don't go into the how until they ask, well, how do you do that? So I've always but yeah, we're just adding one step that I like in there. World's best dark work coach. It's pretty straightforward. And it works it in without having to be some confusion.
And when you say it, I believe it too, because and I've studied a lot of your work as well, and I've had a lot of fun getting to know you and without really having spent much time with you. But what happens, right, is that the most successful people I've ever met, and I've done more than 200 episodes of my podcast, and I haven't done as many as you, but I've been privileged to have people like Les Brown, Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Hansen, and John Gray, and I've had multiple Olympic gold medalists, and a lady, Michelle Lee, who just rode solo from Mexico to Sydney by herself. Like, the best-selling authors on planet Earth, a few movie stars, a few singers, and that, and the people that resonate with me the most adore that statement around world's best courage coach. And what it's done, Anthony, it's allowed me to get access to a room that, as far as I know, you've already got some good access because you're further along your journey than I am, right? But how big do you want to take what you're doing? What levels of impact do you truly want to have before you depart this amazing planet that we live on, right? And for me, I want to witness my legacy while I'm still here, right?
Yeah, I get it. Same.
Right? I don't care when I'm dead because I know, as far as I'm concerned, we're infinite spiritual beings that inhabit the body many, many, many times. And people may disagree with that. That's cool, right? Like that's what I believe. And so this iteration, I want to have as much fun because I don't know what the next one's going to look like. And fuck it. Like, life's short. We could be dead tomorrow, right? But I have no fear of death. So I'm going to play at the highest level I can. And it allows me to attract and magnetize people that are super receptive to it. They're much further along their journey than I. And like Jim Rohn says, you become like the 5 people you spend the most time around, right? And that's what's happening with me. Look at where I am today. I'm in an amazing chat with you, a former professional athlete, American Ninja Warrior, been on National Geographic, written multiple best-selling books. Like, you're crushing it, and I get to teach you something. And so when people realize that they can add value to people that they admire and look up to, that's when the magic really starts to happen.
I agree. I think there's something to being around people that are all shooting for their own world class in some other area. Like I like to be around humans who are shooting to do cool things. Not that I don't like being around those who aren't, but it is a different light up, a different conversation. The conversations take less work. It's almost like who's going to choose not to fill up the entire, conversation with their words? Because either person could, and so it becomes a good back and forth as opposed to clawing for conversation. Like it is, it's a blast. And I think I don't know when it was. I think when I left the NFL, had this chip in my shoulder, like, I played in the NFL. I'm amazing. I'm God's gift to this, And then you start realizing, like, no, I'm just another dude, man. I'm just a guy doing my thing on a massive planet. I'm just a human. But if I can live with that kind of humbleness, knowing at the same time that I'm ridiculously good at some things also that no one else is as good as, doesn't mean I'm better than you. It just means in this pocket, you can't touch me. And that's a good thing for you and for everybody else. But part of this thing can help you become great at your thing, right? So when you have this ability to be, I think, awesomely humble, like you're talking to the guy when he said that, I get that. At one point, someone says, they told me perfectly, said you have to be able to state how amazing you are without it coming off arrogant or demeaning to people. And it's like a practice. But when you can do that skillfully, not even because it's fake, because it's genuine, like then you have something special the world wants to hear. Because it's like, I want to be around you knowing you're confident enough to do you, so I don't got to like worry about you, At the same time, we all win. Like all would say rising tide raises all ships. Like we're all doing well. It moves up. So I love this concept, but I didn't know that beforehand. So I do want to dive into the book because this is a discussion we kind of like, what do we bring into this conversation? And I know you have a book, and it's something that I'd love for you to kind of share, open up a little bit, and then I want to dive into questions that I have about the book.
Well, the book is a divine download from the universe without any shadow of any doubt. And it came about in May 2020. And my wife and I were living back in Melbourne, Australia at this time. And Melbourne, for those who don't know, was experienced some of the harshest lockdowns of anywhere in the world. And my former life, I worked in recruitment for a long time and had a job working back for a company after a failed entrepreneurial attempt in 2019. So with my tail between my legs, I went and took a job back in February 2020. And then COVID hit, and then everyone that had started was made redundant. So at this point, I knew I wanted to be a speaker, right? And the only way that I could get my message out was by creating a podcast. So the first few episodes were local speakers from Australia that I'd met at a conference just before the planet shut down. And there were some incredible people on there as well. But I knew that I wanted to attract people that could help me, compress time and help me further along this journey. And I reached out to Les Brown and I cold called him, and he picked up the phone. It was a Saturday morning when I was in bed in Melbourne, and I sleep butt naked because, that's the way to do it. And he picked up the phone. Right?
I can't do that. I'm not built for it. What if like something happens, like a fire pops off and I'm running around with my balls out? It's a weird look.
Well, okay. I think that means the fire is not that serious, because like if it's a bad fire, you ain't going to care whether you're butt naked or not, right? Maybe it's a different thing in America because you might have to get up and and have your gun. But I've been to a few nude beaches and I've had a sunburnt bum, and I wouldn't recommend that as well. Never fall asleep at the nude beach, people. But
there you go.
So I'm in bed next to my wife. It's like 6 a.m. my time. It's Friday morning, Les's time. He picks up the phone, and I've tried to ring him a few times at this point. The first time he picks up, and I jump out of bed, and I'm butt naked, and we're in a 48-story apartment in Melbourne, and there's all these construction workers that are building this new building like about 10, 15 feet away, and they all get an eyeful. And he picks up the phone. He says, "Oh, Les speaking," in that beautiful chocolate voice of his. And I said, "Les Brown?" He said, "Yes, it is." I said, "Les Brown, it's Laban Ditchburn from Melbourne, Australia here." You can see there's like a geographical reference that I like to make when I call these people. He said, "Well, how can I help you, boy?" And I said, "Les, I'm a huge fan of you and your work. And I'm also the host of an amazing podcast series called Become Your Own Superhero Podcast. And I'd be honored if you came and shared your amazing story with our audience. When are you available?" And he said, "Well, when are you thinking, boy?" Now, at the time, Anthony, I had 10 subscribers on YouTube. It was my 8th episode. And I think half of them were my family members that have since unsubscribed. And had he asked me how big my audience was, I would have told him, but he didn't, so I didn't. And I said, "Well, to be honest, Les, whenever works with you is okay with me." And we scheduled it for 4 days later. It was like Tuesday midnight my time. He jumped on the Zoom. And before we started the recording, I said to him, "Hey, Les, what do you think of the name of the podcast, Become Your Own Superhero?" And he just, for anyone that's heard him speak or knows what I'm talking about, he just absolutely crushed and encapsulated everything I hoped anyone would ever think when they heard the name. And I was so moved by his words, Anthony, that I just verbally diarrheaed my story of transformation to him, some of which I've shared here. And something I said in there really deeply resonated with him to the point where he said, "Do you have a book, Laban?" And I went, "No, Les, I don't." He said, "If you're going to be a speaker, you need a book to help with your credibility." And I said, "Right." He said, "Who was the most influential person in your life when you were 5 years of age?" I thought about this for the first time in my life, right? And despite her many, 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 many flaws, it'd be my mum. And he said, "Well, what attributes did you get from your mother?" Again, I never thought about this question, right? We had a very dysfunctional relationship at the time. And I was like, man, she was unconditionally loving and she's spiritual and tenacious. And he's writing this stuff down, and he looks up at me and he says, "Laban, this is a God moment. I'm going to show you how to monetize your purpose." For the next 10 minutes, Anthony, he reads back to me the blueprint for this book he wants me to write called Bet on You because of the gambling. He said, "Laban, you're going to write the book. You're going to turn the book into a keynote speech. You're going to turn that keynote into a 3-day retreat. And even if you muck this up, you're going to make multiple 6 figures in the next 12 months. And Laban, I'm going to interview you on my show with 4 million followers. And Anthony, I'm going to write the foreword to your book." Now, this is May 15th, 2020. And in a moment of complete and utter insanity, I said, "Les, if you're going to write the foreword for my book, I'll have it to you by June 30. So and amongst the strictest lockdowns of anywhere in the world at the time, I pumped out 30,000 words of Bet on You and delivered it to his inbox at 8:30 p.m. on June 30, as promised, completely changing my life in the process. And so the book is stories of my life wrapped up at the end of every chapter, excluding the first one, with a random lesson. And I wrote it in only the way I knew how to write. And I've gone back to the storytelling because I understand that's the most powerful way of getting a message across to make it sticky and memorable. I've done it from a place where I'm not finger waggling. I'm very honest and raw about the shenanigans and the shit that I got up to, but I've reclaimed all of that. I've taken ownership for that, and there's no victimhood. And so I wrote the book for me 5 years before I hit rock bottom. And I'm so proud of it, Anthony. It's, Les wrote the foreword, and then it got endorsed by Mark Victor Hansen and Dr. John Gray and the former All Black coach, Sir Steve Hansen, and Mark Schulman, who's Pink's drummer, and just incredible people, some of whom you wouldn't have heard of. But, I'm a guy who never finished high school. I never went to college. I never wrote anything ever again. And how dare I pull these kind of things off, right? And I want it to be a powerful example that no matter where you're at in your existence and how much shit you've been through, that everyone's got this divine gift inside them. You just need to figure out what it is and lean into it, and your life will become absolutely magical. Because unlike your background, I'd never been good at anything. I'd been mediocre at lots of things, and now I'm really good at it, and I adore it. And so I get better and better and better.
I love that, man. It's a cool story. It's a beautiful story. It's one of those ones that makes it make sense, like, as to why the book came out of you. Because it does happen. Sounds like a God moment, right? It's like, here's what you do. I love that you went and did it, though, right? Because a lot of people will hear that stuff, but they won't go do anything. They'll have somebody lay it out and at some point face something that becomes this good excuse you can lay out there that someone will buy enough to not like hate you, but they know, and you move on with your day, So I'm just curious, what along that journey, like, where were the points you had to display courage? Like, where were the points? Because now you're already betting on you. I'm going to write this book, put it out. And being the courage coach, the concept of bet on you, which does take courage. What were some of the moments of like writing the book or uncovering or like even sharing those things that you had to like dig deep and go, I got to get this done because I really don't feel like it. But in hindsight, it was pivotal to actually have you do those things.
One of the things that I discovered, and I bet you've gone through this as well, that writing a book, for me, certainly was one of the most cathartic experiences of my life. And it allowed me to remember a lot of things that I'd buried. And not necessarily bad things, but just things that ended up becoming really powerful. Like the first chapter in the book talks about an experience at a strip club in Melbourne where I blew all my money on lap dances and then got propositioned by the double in trouble, they were called. They were two twins. And they propositioned me to take me home. And I didn't have the money that I needed to pay for both of them, and I couldn't take one of them. So I went up the road and withdrew the last of my money, about $800, and went and put it on a one hand at blackjack. and I won't spoil it for people to hear what happens, but reliving those experiences, going, wow, I have lived a pretty eclectic life, but one of the greatest moments was, there's a chapter called Generosity, and it's the day of my 6th birthday when I was. I'm from New Zealand originally. I'm half Australian, half Kiwi, which is why the accent sounds Australian.
Mm.
And we didn't have hardly anything growing up, right? Grew up in a poverty environment, which is character building, but the poverty mindset did a lot of the damage. But I went to school one day on my 6th birthday. We didn't have any money, and there was a school teacher, a substitute school teacher that was retying our school ties. And after we played sport, and she said, "Oh, what are you doing this weekend?" And I said, "It's my birthday." And she said, "Well, what are you doing for your birthday?" And I said, "Well, Mum said we don't have any money, so." But she said she'll make it up to me, right? Like this little innocent 6-year-old kid. And as I was about to leave school that day, she ran up to me and thrust an envelope into my hand, a brown envelope, and she had tears streaming down her face. And she said, don't tell anyone, just give this to your mother. And I used to ride home from school, which is 6 miles each way, by the way, at 6 years of age. It's a long way.
6 miles each way?
Yeah. It's like my still defined calf muscles to this day display like the record of it. But things are different growing up in Christchurch. But she put $30 in there, Anthony, which was 10% of a net weekly wage. And in writing the story, I remembered this, but we couldn't remember her name. So we reconnected with some people at the school. She wasn't a teacher anymore. She'd left, and we eventually tracked her down. She'd become a priest. And I was able to have this incredible experience where I got her phone number and I rang her up. And I'm getting a little bit emotional thinking about this. Well, I rang her up and I told her what she did for me. And that single act of generosity completely shifted my own attitude towards generosity, and has completely, utterly shaped the person I've become today. And we had this wonderful moment where we were both weeping on the phone. She grew up in a very challenging environment. She had 2 adopted children from Fiji that had been horribly sexually abused, and the kids have grown up now and are struggling with drug addiction, and it's a disaster zone. And I've been able to use these skills that I've learned through this journey since writing the book to help her back in her journey. And that's the point of this stuff. It's not about me. It's about this ability to serve people at the highest level. And that is just one example of many, dude. So I really love you for asking me that question, man.
Oh man, yeah, for sure. I love it you shared it too, because I think that is humanity. As much as the world portrays this craziness, everybody's after everybody. Like there's damn near more, in my opinion, people that I've ever come across doing great, heartfelt human things like that than the opposite. Than the ones you find they're few and far between. But I think the world needs to hear more of those stories, because they do exist. We all have those moments. Like I have teachers that I look back on and go, man, that teacher changed my life for sure. There's a guy that sat with me in his name was Tim Manley, sat inside of a little golf cart. It was like my sophomore some year. And like he told me, the principal of the high school didn't believe I was going to be able to go play college football. He's like, this kid's going to be a nobody. But he tells me, he says, I believe you could play in the NFL. Now, I have no background on this. I don't know anything about it. I have no teammates that I've ever been around, of siblings or anybody that played higher than, high school, nothing. But he had this thought. It's like that little seed. And to this day, man, I give him, like, anytime I see him, like, man, I'm seriously thankful, because if you didn't plant the seed, it wouldn't have had it wouldn't have grown in my mind. Never would have been possible. But these moments, they happen from people. And I think as much as we hear them, like, oh, it'd be cool to do that, we can all do that. Every person can be that for somebody else. And yeah, man, it's beautiful. I love that you did that.
That's what you've done, cool, Anthony. And I just want to take a minute to recognize the work you've done. You so congratulatory towards me and my journey, but like having learned about your story and what you've overcome, and the wall of statistics against you even coming out alive, let alone becoming who you are today, is absolutely so inspiring to me. And I know lots of other people that have been exposed to your work. So like my encouragement to the audience, if you're listening to this for the first time, or you've been listening since episode 1 and you haven't shared an episode with someone you care about, take the time to send this to someone, because I'm going to send this to Dago, and I'm going to send this to my teacher. All right, Mandy.
I like it.
And it's going to move them. It's going to move them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what the whole world's about this service, you know.
I like it, man. It is. I agree. And it's I think what it does is it inspires us to go back to the book. It's like, those little those little moments that are pockets of awesome that do allow you to bet on you. I think sometimes we don't realize how close we are to have that little singular moment. Like, because if we're talking about statistically, there's not a lot of people that walk around with mentalities or experiences like we have. And then if they had the experience, that they share it, And so you have these situations where a lot of people aren't exposed to the minds, the hearts, the perspectives. That could be that little single change. And so I like the idea of, like what you're saying, is just go share with somebody, because we're all passing these amazing stories by. I pass people all the time, and they could be battling something, but they just don't know that I am me, and I could visually help them, right? And so I think if we open the door to have more of these conversations, share more of these things, it does plant the seeds that allow people to bet on them, right? Because if you get to hear your story or my story, all these countless stories, there's no logical reason that they are who they are. But at some point in time, they took a leap, they bet on themselves, they pushed something out of the world, they pushed themselves forward in the world, and now, like we call it, magically have success. Like, it's not magic. It was a calculated bet on yourself to lean in, do the work, and then I think, as it should be, you got the results you were seeking. And sometimes the results better than you thought when you set out in the first place.
Well, I want to go back to the statement around when I met my wife, Anna, because about 2 months later, when we were really hot and heavy into the relationship, she revealed to me that she'd written a list of her ideal man. And I was like, no shit, I wrote a list of my ideal woman. You know what she wanted? This is in Melbourne, Australia, we met, right? She wanted a bald New Zealander, tick, tick, right? Who didn't drink.
Why bald?
Right? I don't know. Chicks dig solar panel for a sex machine. I
got to cut my hair off then, dog.
And she'd been on a trip to New Zealand like a year earlier, and she'd fallen in love with the place. And she wanted a bald New Zealander who didn't drink or do drugs or party, who had a great sense of humor, who loved fitness, who loved coffee and loved steak. And when she showed me this bloody list, Anthony, the rest of my hair nearly fell out. And then I'd written, I want an Eastern European, physically fit, loves me. Like, it was just completely manifested. And I think once you get all your shit sorted, or you're in the process of, actually, not once you got your shit sorted, because you're always getting your shit sorted. But like, as you are far along enough the path, you will then energetically attract your ideal partner once you give your subconscious the instructions. All right. And that's all I've done with the other parts of my life as well.
That's really well stated. I think there is something to that. It's like you start to drive in, and then I think you give yourself permission to go get it, and then also retain it, right? Because I think there's something to getting the thing, and then also something to feeling comfortable keeping the thing. And that's all personal stuff you do that makes you feel proud of who you are. Because I'm sure if you at some point did dumb stuff again, you'd feel guilty being in a relationship with a person who's made a commitment to the person that you were, right? So it's like that idea of work on you so you feel proud to have what you have in your life also, whether it's a person or a career or whatever it is, business-wise. Dude, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I didn't even realize that time had flown by. Seriously, I just looked at the clock, and usually I look at it, it's like 20 minutes in. We're like 46. I don't know how that happened. I feel like I was in a little time warp there. No lie, the time slid by. Awesome. I do have a final question. We'll do 2 questions. The first question is, where do I send people to get more of you, more of the book, more of all the fun things you do?
Well, there's 2 things that I would love to make available to people today. If what I'm sharing resonates with regards to the power of communication from a podcasting or a YouTube channel point, if you've been thinking about doing it, or you're doing it already, and you want to compress time and shortcut the way, I created a program called Podcasting Heroes. And what it is I teach people step by step exactly how to reach out and the language to use. I've used some of it today to bring these people onto your show, to be able to form friendships and know, like, and trust, and then to be able to joint venture and borrow audiences, that type of thing as well. Because all these connections that I've made, I don't have a big audience. I've got 1,300 subscribers on YouTube at time of recording, and I had like 60,000 downloads. Not a big show by any comparison. So that's the first thing. The other thing I'd like to make available, the combination of Laban and Ditchburn is the only one of its kind. So if you want to find something that's energetically aligned for you, just punch Laban Ditchburn into your favorite search engine and see what comes up. That's what I'd say.
I like it. That's good, man. Really well stated. It's clean, simple. Go find this man out. If you guys are looking, if any part of your soul is curious, go follow that. Final question. You ready for it? You probably know the question because you listened to the episode. So I'm hoping you got a
I
dialed
haven't
answer.
listened to the end of one, incidentally, so I don't know what it is.
Oh, even better for me. I like that. I like that. So here's the question. What promise did God or the Creator make to the world when they created you?
Would you say that one more time?
Yep. What promise did God or the Creator make to the world when they created you?
I'm not even gonna filter what I'm gonna say here. I promise to bring a bright light into this earth to be a beacon of hope and inspiration and courage for generations to come.
It's a good one, man. We all need a light to follow, right? It helps us see in the darkness when it's hard times. So I appreciate that. It's well stated. Man, thank you. Seriously, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate being flexible with your time. Those of you guys who don't know, we had to adjust the time a little bit. He was very gracious with me with that.
My pleasure.
So, man, I appreciate you opening your soul. Those of you guys who are tuned in still, make sure to take your butts to his places to go find him. Like, this is a solid human. We actually, which is a rarity, we actually had a conversation prior to this conversation. And, it's one of those things where, like, you get to know a person, you go, like, I'm looking forward to talking to that person. I'm looking forward to having. So in this moment now, I'm looking forward to our next conversation, wherever it's going to take place. Seriously am. But you guys, there's going to be some nuggets within this discussion that you can apply to your life. So I recommend you apply one of those. Maybe not all of them immediately, but one nugget. And then if you know someone who needs to hear these words that you can't seem to get through with, let Laban's words reach them. So share the episode with them. Just copy, paste, send. Outside of that, thank you. And as always, make the most of your shift moments so you can make shift happen. It's Anthony Trucks and Laban Ditchburn signing off. Hey, thank you for tuning into the Shift podcast. I pray that we gave something amazing to your life. And if you found this episode served you in some way, I would love you could share it with people you know, people you love, as well as your community, because you never know who needs that simple little seed that can grow into something amazing for their life. And the actual training doesn't stop here. If you want your free copy of the show notes sent to you after every episode so you can get the major points consolidated down, simply go to textanthony.com and message the word notes. Till next time, make shift happen.